Did you push the right button? I think you did.
Tom, everything is working well. We're going to start in just a minute. All right, good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you all. I hope you've had a very good week. It feels like a very long time since last Thursday night, Motzei Tisha B'Av, when we last got together on a Thursday night in order to learn about the Parsha. But it's great to have these locked in, constant elements of these weeks, of our weeks, in order to provide us structure as we navigate some interesting days, weeks, and months. What I'd like to do this evening is to look at a classic portion from this week's Parsha, look at a classic question and concept from this Parsha. We're going to focus on two significant answers to this question and just maybe touch on a third answer at the end. And through these answers, to see what messages our Parsha has for us today in our lives for the tests and tribulations we might be experiencing at the moment. And our starting point is a number of psukim from this week's Parsha. The context is still a few weeks before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away. We're going to say this every week. And this is his last will and testament, during which he recalls the highs and lows of our time in the wilderness and shares messages with us for the future. And in this context, Moshe Rabbeinu provides us with some very motivational words about our upcoming entrance into the land of Israel, contrasted by our experiences in the Midbar, which he very much wants us to remember the experiences and what we should learn from those experiences. In that context, we read, "V'zacharta et kol haderech asher holichecha Hashem Elokecha ze 40 shana b'midbar." Remember kol haderech, Moshe tells us. Remember this entire journey that Hashem led you, these 40 years in the wilderness. Now, why did Hashem take us through these 40 years? The Torah tells us, "Lema'an anotecha," in order to afflict you, "Lenasotcha," to test you. And what is the purpose of this test? "Ladat et asher bilvavcha hatishmor mitzvotav imlo," to know that which is in your hearts, will you keep his commandments or not? And again, in the following pasuk, we're told about how difficult this period of the Midbar was. Vaya'ancha, and he afflicted you, Moshe tells us about Hashem. Vayarivecha, and he let you go hungry. Vayachilcha et haman, and he fed you the man asher lo yadata, that you'd never heard of before or thought of before. V'lo yadun avotecha, your forefathers had never heard of this man. What was the point? Leman hodiacha, in order to inform you, a person isn't only going to be sustained by bread. It is, we will be sustained and live by that which comes out of the mouth of Hashem. So twice in two psukim we're told about the suffering of our time in the Midbar, which was by design by Hashem. We're told that we're going to be tested, and we're told about the man. And then a number of psukim later in Pasuk Tet Zayin, which I brought here straight away, there is another reference to the man. And in describing Hashem, Moshe tells us, Ha'amachilcha man bamidbar, this is Hashem who fed you man in the wilderness. Again, asher lo yadun avotecha. It was unheard of, unprecedented. Why did Hashem give us man? Lema'an anotcha, in order to afflict you. Ulema'an nasotecha, and to test you. Lehetivcha ba'acharitecha, to make it good for you in your end. So man is described as a test from Hashem. When we received our manna from heaven, God was testing us. And the question I'd like to focus on this evening is, what exactly was the test of this man? And we're going to be jumping between the book of Devarim and the book of Shmot, because the man appears in its natural home in the book of Shmot as we left Egypt. And that is when we first meet the man and we first eat the man. That is the natural home of man. And there as well it is referred to as a test from Hashem, as it is in Devarim. What was the test of the man? And for the first part of this evening's shiur, I'd like to focus on Rashi's approach as it appears in this week's Parsha. Rashi tells us in source number 2, Hatishmor mitzvotav, we're being tested if we're going to keep Hashem's mitzvot. Shelot nasuhu, the test is that we shouldn't test Hashem. V'lo teharher acharav, and we shouldn't ask questions about Hashem. We shouldn't lack faith in Hashem. For some reason, which Rashi doesn't describe here, there's something about the experience of being sustained by man and eating man every day, which might make you question Hashem. What is that? What is so difficult about the man where we might end up asking questions about Hashem? Well, the Gemara in Yoma, in source number 3, provides 2 different opinions as to what was so difficult about eating man every day. In source number 3, Hamachilcha man b'midbar leman anotecha, Hashem fed us man in the wilderness in order to afflict us. There are 2 opinions, Rebbe Ami v'Rebbe Asi. Chad Amar, one of them said, Eino domeh mi sheyesh lo pat besalo l'mi she'ein lo pat besalo. You cannot compare somebody who has bread in their basket to somebody who does not have bread in their basket. Or, in our terminology today, you can't compare somebody who has some spare food in the pantry to somebody who has an empty pantry. The experience of eating man was an experience whereby you went to bed every single night with nothing in your fridge. You didn't even own a fridge, and there was nowhere to plug the fridge in, and there was nothing in your pantry, and there was no food at all. And you weren't allowed to leave man over to the next day. And those who did saw what happened to it. The experience of eating man meant going to bed every single night without having a backup option for breakfast and lunch and dinner the next day, in the event that man doesn't fall the following day. Maybe Hashem will be angry with us, or maybe the man won't fall. You are living with empty cupboards every single day of your life. That's the first opinion of the Gemara. And the second opinion of the Gemara is, V'chad amar, the other opinion is, Eino domeh mi shero'eh v'ochel l'mi she'eino ro'eh v'ochel. You cannot compare somebody who sees what they are eating and eats it to someone who does not see what they are eating and eats. According to this second opinion of the Gemara, the challenge of eating the man wasn't a question of faith or a question of having nothing in the cupboards. It was just a physical challenge. You ate the same food every single day and you couldn't see what you were eating. It always looked the same. It looked like, it tasted like a wafer fried in honey, and it looked like coriander seed, but there's a whole part of the culinary experience which is seeing that which you are eating, which for 40 years we were unable to enjoy. We didn't have that opportunity. And there was something challenging about having the same man every single day, as miraculous and as delicious as it may have been. That was a difficult lifestyle for us. So the Gemara gives different ways of explaining how the man may have been difficult for us. Rashi, as a result, says that because of this difficulty, we may question Hashem. And so the testing circumstances of the man were a test for us. How will we respond when it comes to our faith in Hashem? And in source number 4, Sforno tells us explicitly, Laman anotcha, in order to afflict you, shetekayem me'oni. The life of man was like living in poverty. It was the test of having nothing, like somebody who doesn't have any spare bread in their basket. Now, what was the aim of this test? Why did Hashem do this to us? Why did Hashem test us for 40 years in this way? One approach appears in the Rashbam in source number 5. And there he says, Laman en asenu, so I will test you. Mitoch shebechol yom vayom einehem tliot lemazonoteihem elai. By design, what happened in the Midbar was every single day our eyes turned to Hashem for our food and for our sustenance. Mitoch kach, as a result on this dependence, this absolute dependence on Hashem, Ya'aminu bi, will believe in Hashem, v'yelchu b'toratai, and as a result will follow His Torah. K'mosh mufarash b'Parshat Vayaikev, as it says in Parshat Eikev. This is Rashbam in Shmot, but it's referring to this week's Parsha. And what he's saying is that the aim of this test was to build our faith in Hashem, because as a result on our daily dependence in Hashem, we'd be used to the concept that our food always comes from Hashem. And this is part of our preparation to enter the land of Israel. After 40 years of training that our food comes from Hashem, we know every single day, every meal comes directly from Hashem. Then even when we enter the land of Israel, and we work the land ourselves, and we make our own our meals, I'm just going to mute everybody once more. Even when we're the people putting our own bread on our own tables, we will still know in our minds our food comes from Hashem. That is one approach. The second approach I'd like to share with you this evening is one I came across this week by somebody by the name of Rabbi Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer. I'd actually never heard of him before I came across this idea this week, but it was such a brilliant idea, and I wanted to know who this person was. And when you learn more about the person who is sharing an idea with you, it certainly adds depth and light to that which they are saying. Who was Rabbi Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer? Well, he had good yichus. He was the great-grandson of the Chatam Sofer on both sides of his family, which is a good starting point. His mother, Razel, passed away on the day of his Brit Milah. So he's somebody who was never brought up by his mother, never knew his mother. And his father, the famous Rabbi Akiva Kornitzer, was the Av Beit Din of Krakow, and he passed away when Rabbi Yosef Nehemiah was just 11 years old. So from the age of 11, he was orphaned, both of his mother and his father, and he was raised by his maternal uncle. In 1901, he married Brindle Klein and moved to Selesh. Her father was a very significant rabbi there, but he refused to accept a rabbinic position, and instead he worked as a soap factory manager. He refused to become a rabbi, at least in a formal rabbinic role, which shows he was a very clever man. However, his plan didn't work out. Only after the factory burnt down, so maybe it wasn't his fault, he maybe was still a very good soap factory manager, he accepted the post as the Rosh Yeshiva in Selish. He was later appointed the rabbi of Selish, that's taking over from his father-in-law, and then he returned to Krakow to succeed his father after a 33-year vacancy. So he succeeded his father as the Av Beit Din and the rabbi of Krakow after 33 years of nobody filling that position. And he served in that role for 8 years until he passed away in 1933. So this is Rabbi Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer, who is about to share the following concepts with us. In source number 6, I've brought from the middle of a long passage which he wrote, in which he quotes from Tehillim, a pasuk which we know well from Hallel, where we say, Mikimi me'afar dal me'ashpot yarim evyon. We say that Hashem lifts up the dal, the poor person, me'afar, from dust. And then we say me'ashpot, from the dung heap, from the rubbish, yarim evyon, Hashem lifts up the destitute individual. And without saying it explicitly, Rabbi Kornitzer is going to respond to the following question. Surely this is tautologous. This is repetitive. We say the same thing twice, like I just did. We say, Mekimi me'afar dal, Hashem lifts up the poor person from the dirt, and then straight away, me'ashbot yarim evyon, he lifts up the poor person from the dirt. Why do we have to say the same thing twice? And he goes on to explain as follows. Ki ha'ashir mi beten imo, somebody who is wealthy from the womb of their mother, meaning somebody born into wealth, lo yeda ech lahaskil el hadal, will not know how lahaskil, to intellectualize, but here he means to empathize, to identify with the poor individual. Lo nisa be'otzer ra'av v'yagon, that's a quote from Tehillim Kuf Yud Gimel. This person hasn't been tested with the great challenges of domination and evil and anguish. Al Kain, as a result, when Hashem wants to look after the poor people of his nation, what does he do? Yarim mi benehem dal echad. From amongst the poor people, he lifts up one poor individual. V'yoshivuhu im nedivei amo, as we say in the following pasuk in Tehillim, that Hashem makes this person sit with nedivei amo. He places this person together with the princes, with the nobility of his people, and as a result, v'hu kvar yavin eich uvamal hoshia aniyei eretz, this individual who was once poor will now understand how and where and the correct way to provide salvation for the poor people of the land. And now we can understand the pasuk in Tehillim, because what it's saying is, Mekimi me'arfar dal, what Hashem does is that he lifts up the poor person from the dust, lema'an, in order that me'ashbot yarim evyon, he will lift up a poor person from the dung heap. But the word he in this second phrase isn't he with a big H, it is he with a small h. Rotzeloma, what it means, shehadal hazeh, the poor person yarim me'ashbot evyon. The poor person who's risen from poverty to riches will then perform the second half of the pasuk, because they know what it means to be poor and they can empathize with the poor, and as a result, they will uplift other people out of their sorrows and out of their troubles. And Rabbi Kernitzer goes on to say that indeed this has been the design of Jewish history from the very beginning of Jewish history. Va'amarti, and I say, Sha'al Kain, therefore, Miyad acharei hiftiach Hashem et Avraham alav shalom ki zaro yeresh aretz. Straight away, after Hashem promises Avraham Avinu alav shalom that his children will inherit the land of Israel, what does Hashem say? He says, your children are going to have this wonderful land. Hodiyehu miyad, straight away he tells him, Ki ger yeh ba'eretz lo lo, we are going to be a stranger in a land which is not ours. V'ra'ot rabot v'tzarot yimtza'uhu, we will face many difficult and competing adversaries. Adayavo elam nucha v'nachala, before we're able to reach the peaceful resting place of Israel. And why is that going to be the case? Hashem says to Abraham, great news. Your children are going to have the land of Israel, but on the way there, they're going to have to go through suffering. Why was that the case? This was part of Hashem's kindness with us. In order to imprint within our souls the characteristic of kindness and compassion. Hashem did not want to straight away bless us with wealth. Hashem wanted us to experience poverty, to experience suffering, to experience difficulty, and only then would we be able to enter the wonderful land and appreciate all of its riches. And he goes on to say that this is expressed in this week's Parsha in two different places. This is what the Torah means when it says, and it says this on many occasions, V'ahavtem et hager, the Torah tells us you have to love the convert, you have to love the stranger, you have to love the person who does not automatically and naturally straight away fit in. Why is that the case? Because the Torah tells us, Va'atem yedatem et nefesh hager, you know the soul of the convert, you know the emotional experience of the convert, Ki gerim hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim, because you yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt. We know what it means to be foreigners. We know what it means to be different. We know what it means to be outsiders. And as a result, we have an obligation to love the outsider and to look after foreigners or strangers or converts. And then he goes on to say, to bring it back to the context in which we are having our discussion in this shiur this evening, V'zehu bi'ur hakatuv b'parshatenu. This is an explanation of the pasuk in this week's parsha, where we say, Vaya'incha vaya'in rivcha, Hashem afflicts us and Hashem starved us. Why did he do this? L'man anotcha, in order to afflict us, l'nasotcha, to test us, l'heitivcha ba'acharitecha, to make you good in your end. And he has a very careful reading of these words. And he says, V'hadikduk galui shehaya lo lomar l'heitiv lecha. He says, well, in strict normal speaking grammar, it should have said that Hashem's doing this, lehitiv lecha, to be good for you. But the Torah doesn't say that we're going to suffer for it to be good for us. It says, lehitivcha, to make you good. Aval bi'uro al pi ha'amur, based on what we've said, we can explain. Kihu tachlit kol eila ha'enuyim. This is the point of all of these afflictions. Lehitivcha ba'acharitcha, to improve you in your end. La'asot otcha tov v'rachman, to make you a good and compassionate individual. Laman yedu be'et oshram v'shalvatam, so that we should know when we reach wealth and prosperity and a life of peace, echachova aleihem lahitiv im zunatam ulachayot nefesh kol chai, how we have the responsibility to be good to others and to support the lives of every individual. And he concludes by linking this to a bracha, which we say often, the bracha of borei nefashot. And he says, V'zehu, this is why we say in our bracha, borei nefashot rabot v'chesronam. We bless Hashem, who has created many souls, v'chesronam, and their lackings. We bless Hashem that he made things missing, that there are things lacking in this world. Why are we blessing Hashem that things are lacking? In Benjamin, we bless Hashem that he gives us everything. Hazan et hakol. In Borei Nefashot, why do we bless Hashem for the chesronot, for the things that we don't have? Gam ala chesronot tzarich lehodot, says Rabbi Kernetzer. We also have to thank Hashem for the things that we don't have, because as a result of that, L'hachayot bahem nefesh kol chai, through those experiences we will learn to support and sustain all life. Ki hayta kol zot leman yeda al yadam l'chayot nefesh kol chai, will know how to behave when we ourselves have experienced difficult experiences. I think this is a beautiful explanation of Rabbi Kernetzer. It's also a difficult explanation of Rabbi Kernetzer. You know, for those who attended Rabbanit Esti Rosenberg's shiur on Tisha B'Av evening, she raised this tension that exists, that on the one hand, when difficult things happen, you don't come up to somebody and say, you know why this happened to you? Obviously, you've done something wrong. You know why this has happened to you? It's actually good for you. You don't say that to somebody who's suffered a sudden loss or difficulty or a health issue or a financial issue, whatever happens to be. We recoil from doing that to an individual. We just want to be with them and to just be there to listen to them, but we don't try and explain that which has happened. At the same time, when we look at the grander scale and the biblical scale and big things happen, Hashem is talking to us. You know, Hashem took us through the wilderness for 40 years. What is the meaning of that? What is the purpose of that? So to a certain extent, I'm always uncomfortable when we attribute Hashem's actions to particular sins or to particular events or particular reasons, because we're not Hashem psychologists and we don't know why Hashem does what he does. But at the same time, sometimes you just feel Hashem is talking to you. I feel like with coronavirus, Hashem is talking to us and Hashem is sending us a really strong message. I just don't know what that message is. And we don't have a translator for that message, and we don't have a prophet to tell us what that message is, and we're somewhat stuck. When great events happen in history in an age where we don't have prophecy, we aren't necessarily able to translate Hashem's messages when he is clearly sending messages to us. But at the same time, I think because we know who Rabbi Kernitzer was, I think he has a certain license to delve into this area. Because if you lost your mother on the day of your Brit Milah, and you lost your father when you were 11 years old, and you write a piece about the aim of suffering and the meaning of suffering and the benefit of suffering in the world, this is somebody who has a license, I believe, to talk about suffering and can teach us about suffering. But certainly when it comes to empathy, I think it's the most important idea, that when we ourselves have experienced difficult things and we know what it means to suffer, it provides us with an obligation to care for others who will now be going through similar suffering as well. So that was the first approach to our question this evening. The test of the man. What was the test of the man? The test of the man was the test of having nothing in the cupboard. The test of the man was the test of faith in Hashem. And what was the point of those difficult experiences? It was to build our characters. It was to build our relationship with Hashem. Through that difficulty, we are able to improve ourselves at the end of the day. Ba'acharitecha. I would now like to look at a different approach to this question. And in order to answer this question, what was the test of the man? I'd like us to compare to what Rashi says in Parshat B'Shalach, the first time we learn about the man. Source number 7, we are now in the book of Shemot. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Hineni mamtir lachem lechem min hashamayim. Don't worry about all the complaints for food. Bread is going to rain for you out of the heavens. Vayatza ha'am v'laktu dvayom b'yomot. The people should go out and they'll pick up their daily portion, whatever they need for each day. Lema'an anasenu. And this is going to be a test. Hayelech b'torati imlo. Will the people follow my Torah or not? So again, in Shemot, when we're introduced to the man, we're told that we're being given the man as a test. Now Rashi in source number 8, this is Rashi in Shemot, tells us what the test was. When we saw Rashi in Dvarim earlier on in the shiur, Rashi in Dvarim said it was a test of faith. What does Rashi say in Shemot? Leman enasenu hayelech b'torati, im yishmeru mitzvot hatluyot bo. The test of the man, says Rashi in source 8, is to test if we are going to follow the mitzvot connected to the man. Because there were certain laws. The man came with a booklet of mitzvot. Shelo yotiru mimenu, you're not allowed to leave any over to the next morning. V'lo yatzu b'Shabbat lilkot, you're not allowed to go out to gather man on Shabbat. You had a double portion of man on the Friday. There were laws connected to the man. What was the test? The test is, will you follow the laws of the man properly? And as opposed to Rashi and Dvarim in this week's Parsha, where it appears to be a great test of faith in Hashem, for Rashi and Shemot, it is a far more technical test. And commenting on this difference, the Siftei Chachamim in source 9 says that Rashi, in fact, is referring to two separate tests of the man. And he says at the bottom of page 2, this is different from the way Rashi explains things in Parshat Eikev, where he said that we shouldn't question Hashem. Note how in Parshat Eikev, this week's Parsha, the test of the man is connected to the suffering of the man. We mentioned suffering a few times in this week's Parsha, which is above it. But here in Parshat B'Shalach in the book of Shemot, there's no pain, there's no suffering mentioned in B'Shalach. It's just called a test. In B'Shalach, we can't say that it's a test of faith in difficult circumstances, because in B'Shalach, there's no mention of difficult circumstances. So just to repeat that, the man appears in Parshat B'Shalach and it appears in Parshat Eikev. In Parshat B'Shalach, in the book of Shemot, the man is called a test. In Parshat Eikev, we're told that we're going to suffer and it's a test. And the test is connected to the suffering. But in Parshat B'Shalach, it's just a test. What is the test? Rashi says the test is, will you follow the halachot of the man? Now, if this is the case, if there was no suffering connected to the man, we can then ask that surely this was the easiest test in world history. Imagine if I told you the following test. I'm going to test you and I'm going to make sure that for the rest of your life, 3 meals a day are going to be delivered to your front door. You will never have to work another day in your life in order to put food on your table. You will never have to worry where your next meal is going to come from. You'll never have to cook or do the dishes. And you know what? If you follow the Midrashim as well, there might be some jewels and surprises and treats hiding in there. Don't worry if you've got a bad back. You won't have to bend down. It'll actually be at the right level at your front door, hovering on a drone or a miracle for you to just take it straight into your hands. And I'm doing this to test you. To test you, I'm going to give you 3 meals a day and snacks and jewels and treats every day for the rest of your life. And there's no suffering attached, and it's a test. What's the test? How on earth could that be a test from Hashem? It actually sounds like quite a good life. And in order to answer this question, we're going to look at the top of page 3 at the Sforno, because he says the same thing both in Parshat Shalach and Parshat Ekev. I brought one of them here, and don't need to bring it twice. Ulamana sotacha, to test you. The test is im ta'aser ritzono b'tito parnasatcha shelo b'tza'ar. The test is, are we going to fulfill the will of Hashem when we're able to achieve our livelihood, our parnasa, without making any effort at all? Why is it a test to achieve your parnasa without effort? The Chezkuni says in source number 11, Atzavel lahem, I'm going to command them. This is the first opinion. Lo yotiru mimenu ad boker, don't leave anything over to the next morning. Hamotir harei hu mechoser emunah, and if you leave some over, you lack emunah. Okay, that's the first part of the shiur. Davar acher, but there's another explanation. Hayelech b'torati, the test of the man is, will they follow my Torah? Im ya'asku b'Torah. If I provide all their food for them, are they now going to learn Torah? Shani morid lahem ma'achal muchan b'lo Torah charbeh. I'm going to give them ready-made meals without much effort. Umachar shekein hu, seeing as that's the case, yesh lahem la'asok b'Torah tamid. Well, they got no excuses now. Why aren't you having a chavrusa? Why aren't you going to a shiur? There's no excuse. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to cook. You've got nothing to do. That is the test. It is the test of having everything looked after for you to find out what you're going to do. As the Toldot Yitzchak says explicitly in source number 12, Laman Enasena, what's the test? Lam Dechai teaches you, Shekol Misha Mezonotav Meruvachim, someone who's got loads of food, Chayav La'asok b'Torah, must learn Torah. The first answer to our question this evening, what is the test of the man was? It's the test of having nothing. It's the test of going to bed with nothing in your cupboards. The second answer is that the test of the man is the test of having everything. Everything is looked after. Everything is taken care of. It is a test of a life of luxury. How are we going to respond to being blessed in the most wonderful way by Hashem? And that is a true test of our characters. You know, to paraphrase the Maharam Mirotenberg, if somebody works a 9-to-5 job, so that's 8 hours a day, and they commute 1 hour to work and 1 hour back from work, so 10 hours a day are dedicated to their career. And between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., those are 2 hours each day where they get to see their children or be in touch with family members, whatever it happens to be. Can you make the following equation? This person spends 10 hours a day on their parnasa and 2 hours a day on their family. So obviously their parnasa is 5 times more important to them than their family. No, none of us would say that, because that is not how you test a person's priorities. So what is the true test of a person's priorities? The test of a person's priorities is, how do they use those 2 hours after they come home from work? Or, once you have earned enough money to live a comfortable life, you know what? Hashem blesses us. Hashem likes us. We can enjoy this world without guilt. Once you've earned enough money to live a good life, how do you then use the rest of your time? Do you use the rest of your time to make even more money? Do you waste the rest of your time? Do you invest the rest of your time on your family? You see, the test of somebody's priorities is how they use their time once they've achieved the minimum requirement in order to survive and to support themselves and their family and provide security. Once you've done that, how are you using the rest of your time? That is the true test. Every single one of you attending this shiur this evening has passed the test, because you've chosen to use your spare time in order to learn Torah when you could be on Netflix or doing other things. You've passed the test. This is how you're choosing to use your spare time. The test of spare time is the test of a person's priorities, and that was the test of the man. Hashem said, I'm going to bless them. I'm going to give them everything. They won't have to go to work. Their food will be provided for them. Now let's see, with all that spare time, how are they going to use their spare time? Are they going to use that time to learn my Torah or not? And this concept that the message of the man is a message for how to live our lives when we are blessed with luxury fits in very well in the context of this week's Parsha, the context in which that pasuk appears. And if I just go through source number 13, these pasukim in this week's Parsha, you'll just see how it falls into context. You know, this time of year, August time, because this is when the Northern Hemisphere starts their school year. It's at this time of year when many people make aliyah to start the new year in Israel, or the new school year in Israel from September. And at this time of year, there are the most beautiful things in the Torah to read before you make aliyah. You know, it's not uncommon that somebody gets an aliyah in shul the week before they make aliyah, and they say, oh, you won't believe how beautiful it was. Well, the Torah says on the week when I'm making aliyah, look what beautiful things it says about the land of Israel, which is true, because if you make aliyah in August, the chances are quite high that that's going to happen, and because Hashem obviously is sending a message. But let's look at the context in source number 13. We're in the Midbar after 40 years. Moshe is going to pass away in a few weeks. And he tells us about the great gift we're about to receive. Ki Hashem Elokecha mevi'acha el eretz tova. Hashem's giving you a great land. Eretz nachalei mayim mayanot u'tohomot yotzim ba'bikar v'har. This is a land with brooks of water and with springs and with depths just coming forth like fountains from the valleys and the mountain. The beautiful water of the land of Israel. Eretz chita u'se'ora v'gefen u'te'ena v'rimon. Eretz Zeit Shemen Udvash, as we know, the 7 kinds of Eretz Yisrael, a land of wheat and barley and vine and fig and pomegranates, of oil-producing olives and honey. Eretz Asher lo b'miskenut tochal ba lechem. You're not going to eat bread with scarcity in this land. Lo techzar kol ba. Nothing will be lacking in the land of Israel. Eretz Asher avanea varzel, it's a land where the stones are iron. From its mountains, you're going to be able to hew copper. You're going to have natural resources. And what's going to happen? As a result, you're going to eat. You're going to feel full. And you should bless Hashem. And when that happens, don't forget, say thank you to Hashem. For this most wonderful land which he's giving you. And now Moshe gives us a warning. Hishamer lecha. Watch out. Pen tishkach et Hashem Elokecha, lest you forget Hashem your God. Levilti shmor mitzvotav u'mishpatav v'chukotav, and you'll end up not keeping his commandments, his laws, or his statutes. Asher anochi mitzavcha hayom, that I command you today. In the wilderness, we're thinking, why won't we keep the mitzvot? Moshe tells us. Pen tochal v'savata, lest you eat and feel full. Uvatim tovim tivne ve'yashavta. You're going to build these beautiful houses for yourselves. You're going to live in these mansions in the land of Israel. Uvkarcha v'tzoncha yirbiyun. You're going to have increased herd and flock. V'chesed v'zahav yirbelach. You'll have loads of silver and loads of gold. V'chol asher lecha yirbeh. Everything you have will be increased and multiplied. And as a result, v'ram levavecha, your heart will become haughty. V'shachachta et Hashem Elokecha motziacha me'eretz Mitzrayim me'beit avadim. You're in danger of forgetting Hashem, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of servitude. This is Hashem hamolichecha b'midbar hagadol hanora. This is Hashem who brought you through the great and awesome wilderness. Nachash, Saraf, Ve'akrav, Ve'tzimaon. Hashem's brought you from this place, through this place of snakes and vipers and scorpions and drought. Asher ein mayim, where there's no water. Hamotzi lecha mayim mitzor chalamesh. This is Hashem, who's produced water for you from solid rock. And then we reach our pasuk. Hamachilcha man bamidbar asher lo yad'un avatecha. Hashem feeds you man in the wilderness. That was unheard of. Your fathers knew nothing about this. Lema'an anotcha. This was in order to afflict you. Lema'an asotecha. And it was in order to test you. Leheitivcha ba'acharitecha. To make things good for you in the end. To prepare you for the land of Israel experience. To train you for wealth. To train you for a life of physical and financial success. And the danger is, v'amarta, you will say, bilvavecha, in your heart, kochi v'otzem yadi asali et achayel hazeh. It was my power, my might. I'm so great. I'm so wonderful. I made all this wealth. I'm amazing. I'm innovative. I'm the startup nation. It's all me. It's my brain. You'll forget that it's all coming from Hashem. Rather, v'zacharta et Hashem Elokecha, you must remember the Lord your God. Ki hu hanoten lecha koach lasot chayil. Hashem is the one who's given us the potential and the power to perform with such valor. Leman hakim et brito asher nishba lavotecha kayom hazeh. This is all part of establishing Hashem's covenant, which He swore to our forefathers like this day. So, the context in which we are told in this week's Parsha that the man is a test is the context of the warning of wealth. It is the warning against what might happen if you live a life of luxury. Now, Hashem isn't against us living a good life. Hashem wants us to enjoy ourselves. And that's why He's bringing us to a land of chita sora, gefen te'ena, zeit shemen. All these wonderful things. Dvash, did I forget Rimonim? And natural resources and all these sources of water. Hashem wants us to enjoy our time in His land. We're Hashem's guests in His land. We should have a good time, but we shouldn't forget while we are there that we are in the land of Hashem, and our purpose in being there is in order to fulfill our covenant with Hashem that He swore to our forefathers. We started off this evening by asking a question. What was the test of the man? Answer number one, the test of the man was a test of having nothing, which is character building and helps you become a better person and teaches you empathy. Answer number two we've now seen is that the test of the man is the test of having everything. It's the test of abundant wealth. If that is the case, how will you respond? What will that do to your personality? Very briefly, we're going to finish off with answer number three, which means that the test of the man is not having too much and not having too little. This year is a little bit like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Answer number three comes from the Kli Yakar in source number 40. Because he says, somebody who has way more wealth than they need, that's somebody who's never going to really be able to learn Torah. The Kli Yakar, as the ladies who learn with me every Monday morning know, never pulls his punches when it comes to wealth. He was a regular critic of wealth. And the Kli Yakar says, if you're extremely wealthy, you're never going to be able to learn Torah. Because you got so much wealth and so much property and so much thirst for wealth, you're never going to be able to settle down and learn Torah. And he says, don't worry. The man saved people from this as well. The man was not about abundance. The man was not about wealth or affluence. The man was the right amount of food, dvar yom b'yomo, your daily portion. That's what it was about. V'amar Hashem, and Hashem said, L'man enasenu hayelech b'torati imlo. The test is, will you follow my Torah or not? Ki b'stalkut kol amonim. Once all the barriers are removed, harei lifnehem shulchan aruch la'asok b'Torah. Hashem lays the table out in front of us. You're not too poor. You're not too wealthy. It's just right for you to learn Torah. Ve'ein ma'akev, there's nothing to stop you and no excuses. That is the test of the man. So according to the Kli Yakar, the test of the man is not having too much wealth, because you'll never be able to learn Torah if that's the case. It's a test of having just the right amount of wealth. I think that these tests of the man are really, really relevant to us in our current challenges. I think the test of the man is relevant to many tests and tribulations which somebody could experience, but particularly now. Coming through COVID-19, there are certain people who are experiencing the test of the man being the test of nothing. the test of insecurity, the test of parnasa, the test of not knowing, for some people in extreme cases, where their next meal is going to come from. Or perhaps even if you know where your next meal is going to come from, there's the insecurity. Will I be able to keep up these mortgage payments? Can I keep up my current lifestyle? Not knowing what this financial year is going to end up like, or what the next financial year is going to bring. For many people, the test of the man is a challenging test for them at the moment, the test of lacking things. And not to say why Hashem does what he does, but when we face such challenges and such difficulties and insecurities, what we have to ask ourselves is, how can we use these experiences to build our characters? And if this is the first time in our lives where we've ever had to worry about finance, where we've ever had to consider, wait a second, maybe things aren't going to be as secure as I thought they would be, we should remember these feelings and emotions in order to empathize with those who experience this every single day of their lives. On the other side, you know, there are some people in coronavirus who are very time poor, juggling children and work and everything which is happening, and you can't even have a cleaner, and you're doing everything yourself, and you've got no time for anything, and it's overwhelming, and it's a balagan. On the other extreme, and there's everything in the middle, on the other extreme, there are certain people with coronavirus who are now very time rich. They got all the time in the world. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do. And the question is, how on earth am I going to be able to fill my day? I used to walk my dog for 4 hours a day. Now I can only do that for 1 hour a day. How am I going to fill my time? And there are people for whom the test of coronavirus is the test of being time rich. And the question is, how are we going to fill that time? How are we going to use that time? How can we use that time productively so we can look back on these months and be able to say, I set certain targets, I achieved certain things, I used this time well. That can be a real test, to have so many available hours each day. And as a test of your priorities, a test that every single one of you has passed this evening. And whatever you're experiencing, and if you're not finding things difficult at all, shkoyach, well done. And if you're finding things difficult, you're not alone. Things are difficult, whether it's financial or emotional or social. People are finding it challenging. But whatever your situation is, this week's Parsha has something to say to you. It's got something to say to every single one of us. And Be'ezrat Hashem, by coming through these challenges and these difficult situations, it should indeed make us better people, make us more empathetic people. And lehetivcha b'acharitcha, we should also understand one day, Be'ezrat Hashem, that really everything that Hashem does, we should understand. We know that it's for the good. One day we should also understand that it's really for the good as well. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Great to see you all. I don't know if the bankiers are here this evening, because I don't look. Is Aggie here? I think I saw Aggie here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Aggie, you're making Aliyah soon. When are you making Aliyah? The shiur was for you.
Thank you.
When you're making Aliyah on the 19th?
That's right.
13 days to go. But you see, Moshe Trebish is here from Israel, and there are other people here from Israel as well. So you're welcome to join us from Israel as well. But I'm very, very jealous of you. Really.
Rabbi Buvis, our son Dov just arrived in Israel today on Aliyah.
Oh, from South Africa.
Yep.
Wonderful, wonderful.
He's in quarantine now.
Oh, fantastic. Best place to be in quarantine. Excellent. That's very nice. Anyway, I wish you all a good evening and a Shabbat Shalom. Good to see you all.
Thanks very much.
Thank
you.
I stop, Rav Danny. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom to you and your young family.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Good Shabbos. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.